You think medieval battles were just clashing swords and heroic charges, a dance of steel frozen in time on the silver screen. But the truth, the real terror didn't begin when the first sword hit armor. It started days, sometimes weeks, before any battle even commenced. Knights polished their armor not for glory, but to prepare for unimaginable pain. Soldiers drilled relentlessly, muscles screaming under the weight of steel and the weight of fear. Peasants trembled, gripping crude weapons, knowing that a single misstep could mean death. The smell of sweat, blood, and the fear of the unknown hung heavy over the campgrounds. Every night brought restless sleep, haunted by visions of friends struck down, and every morning a reminder that courage might not be enough. Popular movies glorify the clash, showing choreographed heroics and dramatic duels, but they erase the raw, psychological struggle that dominated the battlefield long before any fight began. Understanding this fear, the tension, the anticipation, the ever-present dread, is the key to unlocking the real story behind medieval warfare. This is not just history, it is the human experience stripped to its most desperate moments, and it's far more shocking than the myths you've been told. When people imagine knights, they picture gleaming armor and fearless warriors, but the reality beneath the metal plates was far more human and terrifying. Wearing 60 to 80 pounds of armor was not a glamorous feat, it was an endurance test that pushed both body and mind to their limits. Knights trained daily, running, lifting, and sparring for hours, not to look impressive, but to survive the deadly reality of combat. Each movement, each swing of a sword, was practiced to perfection because mistakes could be fatal, not just for themselves, but for comrades fighting beside them. Even the smallest hesitation could turn a coordinated charge into a massacre. For peasants conscripted into militias, the challenge was even greater. With minimal training, often wielding farming tools converted into weapons, the psychological strain was immense. Fear was constant, but so was desperation, sharpening instincts in ways Hollywood never shows. The anticipation of battle, knowing you would face men trained for years while your own hands shook, wore on soldiers like a slow-burning fire. Sleep was restless, meals were eaten in silence, and every sound in the camp could trigger panic. Knights and soldiers alike experienced anxiety, doubt, and dread long before stepping onto the battlefield. This mental preparation was as critical as physical training. The mind needed to steel itself for carnage, for the screams, for the unimaginable chaos of combat. Armor provided protection, yes, but it also constrained movement, amplified exhaustion, and forced knights to overcome both physical and psychological barriers simultaneously. Every swing, every maneuver, every decision had consequences measured in life and death. To understand medieval warfare, you must grasp this tension, the mental strain, the relentless preparation, and the ever-present fear that hovered over every camp, every night, and every dawn. The image of invincible knights hides the truth of relentless pressure, both physical and mental, that defined their lives. Survival depended not only on strength and skill, but on the ability to master terror itself, moment by moment, under the most extreme conditions imaginable. Movies and video games love to show knights thundering across open fields, lances leveled, banners flying, a symphony of metal crashing against metal. It's cinematic, it's dramatic, but it's almost never how battles actually began. In reality, a charge was a calculated, terrifying endeavor. Knights spent hours, sometimes days, positioning themselves, studying terrain, and coordinating with allies. Every step across uneven ground in heavy armor was exhausting. Every misjudged footfall could throw the formation into chaos. Unlike the heroic duels of film, battles were brutal tests of discipline, endurance, and psychology. Peasant militias, often underestimated, understood terrain in ways knights could not. Marshes, hills, and narrow passes became weapons themselves. A horde of armed peasants with pikes or sharpened stakes could halt a cavalry charge, turning what seemed like invincible knights into vulnerable targets. Fatigue was a hidden killer. Armored men grew sweaty, dehydrated, and tense. their movements, slower than spectators imagined. The clash wasn't instantaneous. It was a grinding, nerve-wracking struggle to maintain formation, morale, and advantage. Even when knights broke through lines, they faced relentless counterattacks, ambushes, and sheer numbers. Fear spread quickly. Panic among a few could ripple through the entire unit. History is full of examples where disciplined peasants, with courage and cunning, repelled far superior forces, leaving knights stunned and beaten. Glory was rare. Survival was the true victory. The romanticized notion of a knight charging in, flawless victory obscures the meticulous planning, fear management, and sheer randomness that dictated the outcome of medieval battles. Understanding this reality reframes the battlefield. It wasn't a stage for heroics. It was a theater of exhaustion, strategy, and psychological warfare, where even the most elite could falter under pressure, and the seemingly weak could exploit every weakness. Medieval warfare, stripped of Hollywood polish, was grueling, terrifying, and brutally real. When the sun rose over the mist-covered battlefield, the tension was palpable. Soldiers, both knight and peasant, faced a reality far removed from the triumphant cinematic duels we imagine. Knights adjusted their armor one last time, the leather straps cutting into their shoulders, their gauntleted hands gripping swords that could tip the scales of life or death. The weight of their metal shells was oppressive, but nothing compared to the mental weight pressing on their minds. Each heartbeat was amplified, every distant sound a potential threat, every twitch of a comrade a warning signal. They had trained for years, yet the uncertainty of the battlefield demanded more than skill. It demanded nerves of steel. For the conscripted peasants, the scene was even grimmer. Many had never touched a sword, spear, or halberd, yet here they stood, surrounded by trained killers in gleaming armor. The wind carried the metallic clang of distant banners, the neighing of horses, and the muted cries of officers giving commands. Fear gnawed at their stomachs, but survival instincts sharpened their focus. A sharp eye, a sudden lunge, a well-timed swing. These could mean the difference between life and death. Strategy mattered, but improvisation was their ally. Every small advantage, every hidden terrain feature, and every surge of courage counted. More than years of formal training. Then the first horns blared, slicing through the morning mist. Knights surged forward, hooves pounding, swords raised, shouting war cries honed over decades. Peasants braced behind makeshift barricades, spears leveled, and hearts racing. Chaos erupted instantly. Armor clashed, bodies collided, and screams filled the air. The meticulous coordination of the knights met the desperate, raw energy of the militia. Surprisingly, in moments of courage and cunning, the peasants could hold the line, exploiting terrain, numbers, and sheer unpredictability. Even the most elite knights faltered, forced to react rather than dictate. By the time the first hour ended, both sides were drenched in sweat, exhaustion, and adrenaline. Victory and defeat had not yet been decided, but the battlefield had revealed its brutal truth. Training, strength, and equipment mattered, but so did fear, mental resilience, and improvisation. The real terror had shifted from anticipation to action, and only those who could master both would survive the carnage. The battle had ended, but the war lingered in the minds of those who survived. Knights and peasants alike staggered through, the shattered remnants of the battlefield, their armor dented, weapons slick with blood and sweat, and hearts still pounding from the chaos they had endured. Victory or defeat mattered, but the unseen scars, the mental toll, were far more insidious. Every scream, every sudden movement, every near-death moment replayed endlessly, haunting their thoughts long after the dust settled. For knights, years of rigorous training could not erase the sheer unpredictability of combat. Even the most skilled warriors had faced moments where control slipped, where instinct had to override strategy, and where hesitation could mean annihilation. Pride and honor were important, But survival had demanded brutal adaptability. The adrenaline that fueled them during the fight now left them hollow, exhausted, and acutely aware of their mortality. Peasants, thrust into violence with minimal preparation, bore an even heavier psychological burden. Fear had been constant, a sharp edge guiding every movement, yet the relief of surviving came mixed with shock. Some felt a newfound confidence, proof that courage could compensate for lack of formal training. Others were haunted by the randomness of death, questioning whether their bravery had been enough, or if luck alone had spared them. The aftermath of battle revealed a truth often hidden by romanticized history. Warfare was as much a trial of the mind as of the body. Knights and soldiers could crush their enemies with skill, but fear, stress, and mental endurance were equally decisive. Sleep remained uneasy. Dreams twisted by memories of screams and shattered bodies, and the weight of responsibility toward comrades, family, and self pressed heavier than any armor. To truly understand medieval warfare, one must grasp this invisible battlefield, the lingering dread, the fragile psyche, and the quiet heroism of simply surviving. Medieval battles were not defined solely by the clash of steel or the charge of armored knights. They were defined by the minds of those who faced them, the soldiers, the peasants, and the warriors who carried fear, doubt, and determination into every skirmish. The romantic image of fearless knights, charging flawlessly into glorious combat, hides the truth. Anxiety, exhaustion, and psychological strain shaped every decision and every outcome. Survival demanded more than skill. It required mental endurance, instinct sharpened by constant danger, and the courage to confront overwhelming odds. Peasant militias, often underestimated, could exploit fear, terrain, and strategy to challenge elite knights, proving that preparation and adaptability mattered as much as armor or weaponry. Knights, for all their training and prestige, were human, susceptible to hesitation, fatigue, and the relentless pressure of combat. Understanding medieval warfare means seeing beyond the spectacle. It means acknowledging the tension, the preparation, and the fear that defined each soldier's experience. Every battlefield carried both visible and invisible battles, waged within the mind as much as on the ground. And perhaps the most haunting lesson of all is this: courage was never guaranteed, and survival was never certain. Would you have faced the dawn of battle, knowing fear awaited at every step?